Andrew, such a pleasure to connect with you, to have you here in my home, to be in your home with you. We've been meaning to connect in real life for a while, and I think this is the closest we've gotten in a couple of years. So I'll take it.
Who knew that Corona was going to bring us together?
Here we are.
So much for social distancing, right?
Well, let's start here. Why don't you introduce yourself and give a little bit of context to who you are and what you do professionally?
Sure. My name is Andrew Goetz, and I am one of the co-founders of the eponymous brand Malin Goetz. We have now been in business for 14 or 15 years, and I started it with my partner in life as well as my partner in business, Matthew Malin. And we have a skincare brand where we have 16 stores across 3 continents. And the whole tenet of the brand was really how to simplify and make skincare easy with thinking of people with sensitive skin, which Matthew suffers from.
Mm-hmm. And where are you riding this whole COVID stay-at-home order at?
So we are what I unceremoniously call under country house arrest at our second home in Hudson, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And we are extremely fortunate to have this refuge and to have a lot of space, which is great because when you work and live with somebody, it's even more important. But yeah, we're up here in Columbia County, and even though the weather has just been dreadful, we're incredibly fortunate to have this refuge.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, I guess if you could, of course, the day-to-day has changed dramatically for everyone, just not really leaving to go to an office or to your store or to check in on things, to visit vendors and so on and so forth. But how has the landscape of your business changed since?
Well, like everyone's business, it's changed dramatically, not always for the better, of course. I mean, there's been incredible challenges. I think when you have a business that's based on retail to such a great extent as we do, not only with our own stores, but with our department store and specialty store partners. And when the world closes down, obviously that's a hardship that nobody could have predicted in any single way. On the flip side, we've had an incredibly robust digital business, not only through malingoetz.com, but through also all our partners. So there is definitely a very nice silver lining in all this. But I do miss the day-to-day interaction, the vis-a-vis of going into the office and collaborating with our team. While technology allows us to do a lot of that via Zoom and Google Hangouts, it's just not the same. So, we try to keep a very structured day. We wake up at the same time. We go to work at the same time. It's a little bit different working from home, obviously, some other distractions. But for the most part, we're very disciplined about it. And I think the weather's actually been helping a lot because it's been so miserable that there's not even been the temptation to really go outside and try to get the garden into shape.
Yeah, I mean, you briefly mentioned third-party partners in terms of the eComm or the digital business extension. Can you maybe reference a couple different partners or models such as subscription or here or there and the other thing that may be particularly strong for you these days?
Well, our strongest, hands down, is malingoetz.com. I mean, that really has just been incredibly robust since the crisis has begun. We also work with Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's, some of the bigger department stores. Unfortunately, Barney's, you may have read about it, rest in peace, is no longer a partner. And then we have a bunch of smaller special retailers. So we're definitely accessible, and people have not stopped shopping. I think the way they shop obviously is very different. So it's sort of like squeezing a balloon. You squeeze and the air goes from one section to the other, but it hasn't popped. So that's all the really good news. But I do miss having our own stores, and I think there's nothing like a face-to-face interaction with a customer and being able to really talk them through something and explain something. Something is missed in a purely digital world where it becomes a little bit more transactional and a little bit less satisfying.
In New York, you have a really nice footprint in the physical side. So, of course, whether it be your independent stores like on the Upper West Side, as well as your store in stores within some of your partner retailers, um, how have you been, I guess, navigating or kind of risk mitigating that aspect of the business?
Well, I mean, there's not a lot that we can do. Unfortunately, we had to furlough a lot of people, both in our wholesale team and our retail team. The goal, of course, is to bring them back as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, we're just not, and I don't think we're alone in this boat, that we can just indefinitely keep people on payroll until this all passes. I wish that was the case, but that's not. So we've made some very difficult decisions and made some cuts and salary cuts, and trying to keep we've kept everyone's health benefits. So we're keeping the ship going, but it's not all hands are on deck. So that's the unfortunate part. But I think that will change, and then it's just a question of the segue of how quickly we can get everyone back into their seats.
There seems to be, at least in my observations of just talking to friends and family and this and that, is kind of a concentration on the consumer front, or a kind of renewed attention to self-care overall from home, which is interesting during this time. And it makes sense. Are you seeing the same? I know you said your eComm is, of course, doing well, but is that what's attributing to this? Is like newer customers, or is this
I think first of all, people have a lot of time on their hands in a way that they probably didn't before. I mean, we were always in a mindset of rushing from place to place and trying to get to the gym, and taking care of ourselves. But I think when you find yourself home alone and with a little bit more extra time, when you look good, you feel good. So people are taking care of themselves. Nobody's really letting themselves going to pot, so to speak. I mean, when you keep on reading on things online, it's things people complain about. It's like, oh, I can't get my nails done, I can't get my hair done. But they're doing these things, and they're taking it into their own hands, and sometimes maybe that's ill-advised. I keep on seeing all these crazy things on YouTube of people botching things up. But the good news is they try, and nothing is permanent. So it can all be fixed in the later run. But I do think there's a human spirit to want to always continue. There's this very intrepid sort of like, we're not going to be held back by this. I'm going to continue to look good and feel good and exercise at home and take care of myself, which is what we're all doing.
And and it's a really nice reaction to this, and hopefully people keep that mind, body, spirit alive and well as we transition back, hopefully sooner rather than later. With the priority on digital across retail right now, you're finding that retailers that already prioritize digital or made savvy investments are doubling down, and the ones that are a little bit behind are like, oh shit, I got to catch up. But what I am finding that particularly interesting is kind of like the investment is really going in on how to connect, right, in different ways, whether it's clienteling apps that are meant for digital, whether it's augmented reality, which has, of course, been particularly strong or tested widespread within beauty retailers. Are you making any kind of new initiatives or doubling down or anything that you've already started as a result of COVID?
It's been this isn't new to us in the sense of that us realizing how important the investment in digital is in e-commerce. So we've been doing it for quite a while now. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Maybe not. So we've been doing it for quite a while. Matter of fact, when we launched the brand back in 2004, we sort of have this platform where we wanted a physical store. We knew how important luxury retailing was, and we knew how the potential for e-commerce. So I jokingly always say we launched with the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, and the Navy, meaning that we needed all those sectors in order to create the brand. Mm-hmm. And even in the post-corona world, I don't think the blitzkrieg of just e-commerce is going to save everything. I think stores will remain incredibly relevant. They'll be very different. I think stores have become, people have become over stores. The system was antiquated in many senses. So there's a sense of renewal. And I think that's good, or it's a good pruning, maybe a hard prune. So all these things are, in a way, sort of healthy, as painful as they may be.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, as important as digital is, and e-commerce is, and will continue to be, I don't think it's the sole solution for how we go through things. I mean, people like to go to stores, people like to shop, but they'll be doing it a little bit differently. And so it's going to be an amalgamation of what can I do online versus what can I do, what's the joy of shopping, the joie de provision, you know, how do I go about it? Because there is a great pleasure in going into a store.
Yeah,
Whether
100%. And I think that, you know, the
or a
same,
fashion store or a beauty store.
yeah, and you know, the same kind of dialogue we were all faced with as retailers and folks in the fashion and beauty industry of, oh, e-com is going to take over, you know, the physical retailer is dead. And then, you know, that clearly those pundits stopped chattering that song and tune probably like 4 or 5 years ago. But you're seeing it kind of creep up again. But I agree with you. I think that, you know, as tested in the past, and it'll continue forward, that nothing can take away the experience of the tactile retail. And
I think there's great opportunity. I think it's obviously morphed and obviously changed. There's no question about it. B and C level malls are not going to be the same. Luxury retailing will also not be the same, whether it's Neiman Marcus or Barney's in trouble. So I think things are changed, but you know, change is also spurs new ideas and creates concepts of creativity. So I think all these things are very healthy in the long run. Not always easy, often painful, but I don't think that everything becomes so compartmentalized that you or siloed that you're only doing this, only doing that. Human beings are much too complex to only focus on one means. Otherwise, we're living in the matrix, and I don't think any of us want to get to that point.
I mean, why don't we take a step, kind of like a step back, and take a look at a broader picture of beauty as a whole. You know, so taking off your Malin Goetz hat necessarily, and just talking through of what you may see the beauty industry or the landscape look like, you know, as we find ourselves into a post-COVID world.
Yeah, I think the beauty industry has been heading in a specific direction for even pre-corona. Beauty's constantly changing, and I think the internet has helped beauty change very quickly, not always in a way that makes sense, but sometimes that's okay. The problem with being able to go online and find everything is that all of a sudden everyone has a PhD in biochemistry. And that's not quite how things really work in the real world. So, but perception is reality, and there is great, you know, knowledge is power. So it is great to be informed. It's just a question of where you're getting information. Is that information verified? Is there scientific proof, or is it just a lot of hearsay? That being said, I think, you know, people are moving towards, and I think this is great, more of a quote unquote clean beauty concept, which is something that we've actually incorporated in our brand from the very beginning by using the least amount of packaging, doing everything local to New York City to cut down on the carbon footprint. We use a combination of natural, but the real world is you need science to create preservatives, because these products are sitting on your shelf for 6 to 9 months. And if it was truly natural, it would be sitting next to the mayonnaise with an expiration date the same as your milk. And that's just not how we live in the modern world. So things are changing. I think transparency is super important. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a lot of it out there all the time, because people say they're one way, but they may or may not actually be that way. So what we try to do is that we try to be as transparent as possible and say, yes, these are the things that we're great at, but we're limited by technology and the zeitgeist of what can and cannot be done. But that doesn't mean we're not always striving to do better. And I think our customer, I know, always appreciates that. So yeah, do I wish everything could get recycled and plastic would disappear? Of course, but we're not there yet. So right now we're trying to use post-consumer plastic. They're incremental steps in the right direction. And I think a lot of companies in the industry is doing that because there's just so much waste in packaging that's just unnecessary.
Absolutely. And as you, I guess, as you plan for, I guess, a reopening or a slow kind of transition to a full service business again, so having the physical back in your wheelhouse, how do you plan as a leader to do that, to bring back the team, and how does that communication look like in your head right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of an unknown. So we're waiting to see what happens. You know, I think it's going to be incremental, not only geographically, but also by category. So I don't know when New York, where we have the most vested interest, because we're based here, we have the most stores here, or Los Angeles or London, which one happens first. But it'll be incremental, and we're going to have to test the waters. What is the comfort level of people going into a store? Just because you're allowed to go into a store doesn't mean people will go into a store. So I don't think we can just all of a sudden like open the floodgates, say everything's back to pre-corona. We have to test and see or observe what the environment is going to tolerate. And hopefully as that, the one thing I always believe in human beings is that water does find its natural level very quickly, and that we will return to a life very familiar to the one that we left. It's a question of how long it takes to get there, but I think we will get there with some new twists, no doubt. But as that happens, we're very strategically getting people back into the team. I mean, so I don't know what happens. It might be different, say, for a small boutique where people feel more comfortable. So maybe our retail division, Malin Goetz stores are up and hopping before we know it. But what happens in a department store environment where people just are a little bit more hesitant to be around large groups of people? Maybe that doesn't return as quickly. So that means, how do you allow that your team there to reintegrate? So I think it's a lot of wait and see, and being very optimistic that things change or return back to normal, and also thinking about planning what we can do in lieu of if they don't. So, but it's an unknown. It's a little bit of an unknown.
Andrew Goetz of Malin Goetz, thank you so much for lending your experience, your insights, and wish you, your family, your colleagues, everyone around you, nothing but wellness and a return to normal soon.
Likewise, and enjoy your time with your kid. It sounds exciting.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.